So the first thing you want to do is you want to open the application of Handbrake. And something you're going to notice when you first open it is that right away it's going to kind of give you the option to open your file right away. So it's really easy and quick to kind of open your file this way. But I'm just going to press cancel for now because I want to talk a bit about Handbrake and why it's so good. So when you think about a Adobe Rush, um, although you can download it, you do sometimes need permission and access to use it, whether it's from your school or your work, or you have to pay for it if it's not for free. But the good thing about Handbrake is that it's completely for free. Anyone can download it and anyone can use it at pretty much any time. And it's just so great for compressing files. And towards the end, I'll show you guys an example of an original file versus a compressed file. And Handbrake is going to be used as always the last step of your video editing process. So although it may be tempting to kind of compress a file, put it into OpenShop, and then kind of work with that compressed file and an original file, it might not work well in your timeline of OpenShot. So you always want to completely finish your video and then bring it into Handbrake once you're completely done. So to begin, you want to open your file. So as you saw at the very beginning, when you open the program, it asks you to open your file right away. So if you press cancel like me, then you can go to the top left and you'll see open source. So if I click open source, that same window opens up and I can choose the file that I want depending on where it is. So that's another way to open your file. So again, I'll press cancel. You may remember from the training that was yesterday and the day before, but you can also just drag and drop your video in. So for example, if this is a video that I want to compress, I can just take this video and just drag and drop it into the program. So you can see that it's just opening it up here. And here is the video that I'll be working with. And depending on the way you have it downloaded, so even for me, if I were to right click on the file, another way to open it is just to go open with, and then I can just select Handbrake right here. So I don't even have to have Handbrake open. I can just go to the file itself and it will just open Handbrake this way as well. So now that we have Handbrake open and we have the file that we're working with, these kind of different options at the top, this is similar to your toolbar that you would have in OpenShot or Adobe Rush, where you can cut and snip different tools. So this is our toolbar for Handbrake. So it goes through a summary. You can say dimensions here, filters, video, audio, subtitles, chapters. And we're just going to go through one by one of the different settings that you guys are going to be working with. And these all determine how the video is compressed and the size of the video and how the video will end up after you're done compressing it. So we're going to start with the first one here, which is summary. So when we're on the summary page, the first thing that you can see is the preset near the top over here. And you can see that it's automatically set to fast 1080 p30. So this is a setting that we want to keep it at just because it's pretty universal right now. And it has a lot of functions that are going to remain kind of the same. But if you wanted to explore what there is, you can do the drop down. And as you can see, there's a lot of options here. And even for web, if you're posting your video to maybe YouTube, you can select one of these options, which are going to be ideal for YouTube. There's even different options for devices and so on. So we're just going to keep the same 1080p option that's already set for us. And next we're going to look at the format of the file. So if you guys remember from Jacqueline's little presentation that she did on file settings, you'll remember that MP4 is the most ideal format and file that we want to work with. And as you can see with this preset that we had, the file format is already at MP4, so that's pretty good and there's no changes there. So we're going to leave that as it is. So the next thing is just right below the format. Because you may be posting these videos onto Learn, we're going to want to select Web Optimized. And one thing you'll notice when we select this is that the preset here is going to be shown as modified. Because although this is the preset we're working with, we're now going to start making changes which is going to slightly modify this preset. So as soon as I click Web Optimized, our original preset has now been modified. And this is good to note because at the very end, after we have made all of the changes that we want to make, we're actually going to save a new preset. And basically, this is going to allow you to save time in the future, because if you're maybe working for one prof and you're creating a lot of videos and you know that they're all going to be on Learn, then you can make all of the changes that I'm showing you. You can save it as a new preset so that each video and file you drag in here, you can just go to the saved preset and automatically start the compression without having to go through each of these functions every single time. So that's a pretty cool feature that we'll do towards the end. So next I'm going to go to the dimensions. So there's not too much going on here with the dimensions. We can see that there's storage size as well as display size. So for the storage size, this is telling us the resolution of the clip, and the display size is going to be the size of it. So for example, if I were to change the resolution to, let's say, 1000 and I hit enter, as you can see, it also changed the display size. So we actually just want to keep this as it is because we don't want the display size to change, because as soon as it starts to change, our video will be slightly cropped than it originally was, and we don't really want that to happen. So everything on the dimensions should stay slightly the same unless you have specific need to make it smaller or anything like that. So next we're going to look at the filters. So I personally have not really explored this function too much. And that's only because the videos that I've been compressing didn't really need to have any filters done. So I just had no use for the filters really. And I haven't really had the time to really look into it because every video that I compress, it does take some time. And so I haven't really felt the urge to wait for that time in order to just see what it does. But if you guys do want to play around with these different filters, I would suggest you go to either the OpenShot or Adobe Rush. And what you can do is you can maybe cut like a 30-second clip, 20 to 30 seconds, and you can insert that into Handbrake. And then that's when you can kind of play around with these different filters. And that's going to help you to play around with it, see what it does, and then you can compress it a lot faster than, you know, a 10-minute video. And you can just see what it does really quickly without having to wait as long to see what it does. So I'm just going to skip over this for now, and I've made no changes here yet. So this video tab is a really, really big and important tab to work on. This tab is going to determine a lot about the file size. So again, because we're trying to compress it, we want a really small file. And this also has quality as well. So we're looking at the size and quality of our video on this tab. So it's very, very important to work on this tab. So the first thing we're going to look at is the video encoder to the left. So as you can see, there's a lot of options that are here as well, but we're going to keep it at the preset one because it's pretty universal to work on for compressing. So there's no need to change this one. And it's already pretty good and pretty set for you guys. So just below it, we're going to look at the frame rates. So right now it's set at 30, and a good kind of tip to follow is to always make the frame rate the same as the original video that we're already kind of working on. And if you don't know what the frame rate is for that video, that's totally fine, because one of the options for the frame rate is to actually keep it the same as the source. So you want to make sure you click same as source, and that's going to ensure that the frame rate is the same as the video already is, and no changes are happening to that. And then even below that, we see that there is variable as well as constant. So for variable, when this is selected, basically the software is using its own intelligence and determining, you know, which, since it is same as the source, which frame rate should be faster in some areas, maybe slower in others. But again, we want the file size to be nice and small, and using this variable one might increase the size. So we're actually going to select constant here so that the entire video has the same constant frame rate, which is going to help us with the size of our file that we're working on. And next we're going to look at quality over to this right. So you want to make sure that these two options below are selected, both the 2-pass encoding as well as the turbo first pass. If ever one of them is not selected, you can select the average bitrate, and then you can go in and select the ones that need to be selected. So for example, if this was not selected, then I would just go into here, select it, and then you can go back out. And this is really important as well. So the slider here is determining the quality of your video as well as the size of your video. So if you move the slider to the right, this is both going to increase the quality of your video, so you will have a better quality video. However, it's also going to increase the size of your video as well, which we don't really want because we're trying to compress it. So similarly, if you bring it to the left, this is going to be a less quality video that you're going to compress and extract. However, the file size will be smaller as well. So from a lot of videos I've seen and my experience playing around with Handbrake, you want to stick between an 18 to 22 range. That can make sure that the quality is not being altered in any way. You still have the quality that you started off with, but the file size will still be smaller. With these settings, so I think only a few times I've had to work with 24, and it's only because the instructor did request to have an even smaller file size than what I already gave him. So I made it 24, and it was able to be slightly smaller than what he wanted. But again, 22 to 18 is a really good range to stay within. So now we're going to move on. So now we're looking at the audio settings. So for me, the videos that I've been compressing so far haven't had any audio, so I have been skipping over audio and I don't really make any changes because the changes won't really apply if you have a silent video. But a few things to note if you do have volume is the codec here as well as the bitrate. So let's look at codec first. So a lot of the options that you see here, they're geared toward home theater users and people who are creating videos for that. But this first AAC option, it's pretty universal, as I mentioned before, and so it's a really good just compressing format. It's going to compress your audio the same way that the video is being compressed to make sure your file size is still nice and small. And then if you look at the bitrate here, the bitrate is going to make the sound better. So if you do have maybe voices that are a little muffled and you weren't able to make the audio a little more clearer in your video editing software, then you can try increasing your bitrate here, possibly to 320. And this will make your audio sound a little smoother and it will increase your audio quality. Again, this may increase the size of your file, so of course you can play around with that, because if you're exporting your video from the software, then you may not have any audio issues, so you could just leave it at the 160 that's already set for you as well. So now we're looking at the last two options. So we have subtitles as well as chapters. So again, I usually just skip over this just because there's not really too much to work with here. For subtitles, I assume that it wouldn't actually add subtitles to your video. It would just, let's say you're reducing the quality of your video, maybe it'll ensure that the quality of your subtitles that's already there will remain intact. But I do not think that it adds subtitles for you. But of course, you guys can play around and see, you know, what happens when you do work with both of these additional tools. So for now, those are kind of the main changes that we want to make. So I'm just going to go back to the summary, kind of like the home page where we see everything. And so at the top here at the preset, again, it's still modified because we have made a lot of changes to the original that it gave us. And so if you want to save all these changes, then you can go to Save New Preset. So again, this is really great if you have maybe a few props that you're working with, or even if all the videos you're compressing are all going to go on to Learn, you can just name your preset learn uploads. And then you can add your preset. So that, and then even here you can see that now the name has changed because all of these settings match this preset that we have. So if you ever import a new file to compress, it'll just automatically bring you to this one, but you can go to the drop down of preset and you can go to my presets at the very bottom. And so I even have a few already. So if you have one that's course specific, or if you have only learn, then that will be the preset. And then you even saw this change. So all the changes will automatically apply as soon as you click your saved preset. So last thing to note before we can compress the file is the name of the file that's at the bottom, as well as the location that the file will save to, also at the bottom. So if I got this file out of my desktop and it had this exact same name, then if I go to start the compression, it's not going to allow me because you can't have the same file. It's going to be a duplicate file with the same name in the same place. So if you ever get that little pop-up, you have to either change the name or change the location. So for me, I'm going to change the name to OpenShot Tutorial 1, and I'll do _ compression demo. And my desktop is a good place to save it to, but if you ever want to save it somewhere else, you can go ahead and click Browse. And again, here you can see that all the options to save are coming up. So I'll go ahead and cancel that for now. So now the final step is to compress your video. So if you are planning to compress maybe, let's say, 3 or 4 videos, then you can either add this file to your queue, which is at the top over here. So I'm going to go add to queue. And what you can see here is that now there's a one file in my queue. So if I go to my queue, my one file is here. And again, so every file that you add will just kind of be listed here. And you can start the compression in your queue here. You can pause it in the queue. Or even on the homepage, you can press start as well. And this will just automatically, as you can see at the bottom, now my video is starting to compress. So a cool thing to note is that if the compression is taking too long, if it's taking too much out of your laptop or your computer, then you can always pause the compression. And then you can continue some other work, or maybe on your lunch when you're not working, you can press resume and continue the compression. Because as you can see here at the bottom, this is the percentage. So we're not even at 1% compressed yet. And that's because this file is over 1 GB in size. And as you can see here in the duration, it is almost 20 minutes long. So this file will particularly take a very, very long time to compress. So I'm just going to stop all of these. And then even in my queue, now I can see that this little stop sign is here, so that was stopped. And I'm just going to remove this from my queue. And now I'm just going to show you guys an example of the videos and kind of how they're able to compress nice and small. So as you can see here, this first video is the one that I have kind of just been showing you guys step by step with. It originally was 1.2 gigabytes, and after compressing it, we were able to get down to 55 megabytes there. So again, this video was about 22, 23 minutes. So that's quite a difference in size. And then for these 2-second videos, this final copy is a video that I created for an instructor, and it originally was 73.1, and after compressing, I was able to get it down to 12.7. So again, that's a pretty big difference, and that's a lot more compatible for Learn and for students to run that from their laptop, and it'll just be a lot more ideal